Hello and welcome to today's Thursday show on Our Game. Myself, Michael Verdi, in the hot seat. The Saint is extending his pre-season training at the moment, but delighted to have an able deputy in Kilkenny legend, Eddie Brennan. Eddie, how are you?
I don't know about that, Mixer. How's the farm? I
Good.
don't know.
Does it ever annoy you, actually? Because, like, say us journalists, like every time I do a story about you, or it'll always be, Kilkenny legend. Is that a nice thing, or is it a bit like, oh Jesus,
Yeah, it's a bit. Oh Jesus. It's funny. Yeah, I don't know because you never. It's funny. People say things like that, and I see. You say it myself about sports stars or whatever, and you just. I suppose you say it, but you don't like it being said about you. That's like genuinely you don't because you just go listen. I suppose that's for me the thing about GA. You're just one of the lads up the road. You're just when you land into the club. There won't be too many in the club calling you a legend anyway, that's for sure.
Well, you won't be long being a bollocks, to be honest with you,
Yeah,
depending on what you do.
That's it. Oh no, there's no doubt about that. But sure, look, all part of the fun anyway.
Eddie, obviously a massive game this weekend. We'll chat a bit more in detail about it in a minute. But I'm just wondering about, there'll be a lot of comparisons made between the current Limerick team and your own Kilkenny team. Despite maybe having a bad league last year, Limerick have been quite dominant in the league, winning in 19, winning in 20. Was it something that you were always conscious of back in the day with Kilkenny, that while you're not going, 100%, you don't have all your training done, you don't have maybe your body of work done that you'd want to have done, but that this seed sows a little seed of doubt in the opposition, if we're able to win in league time when maybe we're missing a cohort of Ballyhale lads and we're not fully tuned up? Were you kind of aware of that at the time?
Yeah, sometimes you are. I think the league is all about, I think you come in and you find out quickly enough where you're at. Personally, you look at yourself, you're always assessing yourself and say, am I fit? Am I moving in the right direction? And as you go through the league, then you're obviously looking for that bit more life in the body and the legs are, moving a bit quicker or whatever it is. And then you're looking around probably at, I think as I got a bit older, you looked at it as a responsibility too of bringing, if new lads were in, that you had to kind of help them along the way as well. Like, so you were, and obviously you didn't want to help them too much for fear to take your spot off you. But
you wanted to have them tuned up so that just when you were exiting the door, they were ready to step through it. But you don't want to have them flying through the door while you're still there.
That's it, and it is. It's even. I think I suppose the league is too about the old road trips as well. Like I remember, going to places like Galway, going to places like Clare, on the bus, and sure there was like if you hadn't a bit of crack on the way down, that was that was what kept you, I suppose, somewhat relaxed and ready for the match. But yeah, going back to the question, I think you wanted to kind of arrive towards the back end of the league, just as you're facing into the late spring into the summer, and you wanted to be. I think you wanted to show the manager, number one, that you were dialed in, and it wasn't a case of you were easing up or it was the one thing you always wanted to show, that you were in good form and you were looking forward to it. And Brian often spoke with body language, so you made sure that you got your own house in order. But equally, then it was a responsibility to keep the younger lads going and help them along the way. But as regards then keeping the opposition at bay, I think we got to a league final in '07, I think, against Waterford, and we'd done it without the Ballyhale lads, and I think Henry came back in for that league final, and Waterford beat us, in a great game up in Thurles that day. But I remember even chatting to my father afterwards, and he was saying, like, when you look at the team that got us to that league final, he said, look, you'd have to be happy with the progress. And it was the same then. I jumped forward to '09. We had a cracker of a game in Thurles. And when you think of that match, and I spoke about this recently, during that match, right, we lost Henry, Comerford, Mick Kavanagh to yellow cards during the match where you had to go and a sub came in.
Right, yeah.
And then before the match, we lost Derek, Michael Fenley, Noel Hickey, Brian Hogan got injured during the match. So by the end of that match, we had a crew on the pitch that a lot of people would have felt, geez, you'd be tipping Thurles in league final. I think Michael Grace came on, and that was the time that Richie and TJ announced themselves, Richie Hogan and TJ Reed. That day, I think they scored phenomenally between the two of them. Taggy was brilliant. So that was where you learned we have a great squad now heading into the championship. And that's like what your question was, where you were at. You were building your squad. And I see a lot of similarities now in Limerick at the moment.
Yeah, it's funny because Richie and TJ stood up and maybe didn't get the chance to take the mantle maybe for another couple of years come championship by the time Henry and a few other lads were gone, but they showed that they were able to do it. Just a question in there from Richard Hogan. He's just wondering, Eddie, is Eddie going back playing Junior E this year?
Well, we won Junior E last year, so we're up to D. So Junior D championship this year, I don't know.
You got by all accounts from chatting to you before, you got as much crack out of that and as enjoyment out of that as anything in the last couple of years. It's great once you get to a certain age, you are just delighted to be still playing and chatting and talking with the lads and having a bit of crack. Like, it's great to just be out there even. Like,
That is brilliant. Yeah, no, last year I really, really enjoyed it because kind of early in the year, you don't need to go training, you just arrive on. And my approach was, if the boys are stuck and they're short, happily we'll tug out and we'll make sure that we have a team. But definitely the younger lads have to be put in first. And as the league went and then we got into the championship, suddenly there was a settled 15, which had, I think, there was 4 of us starting and we broke 200 between us. And so, and by the end of the match, I think there was 2 or 3 more 37 or 38-year-olds on the pitch. So, but there was a great old spirit because you had the real young lads, 19, starting off their careers with the club, and then you had the granddads or the pensioners, as they were referring to us. And it was even just listening to them and the bit of gallery with them, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. And even the night afterwards, looked, was even the crowd that came from the club. Great satisfaction, but just I suppose it's like you said there, it's real utterly enjoyable because the pressure is off. You can just let loose and go and hurl. And sure, look, I remember at one stage our coach was like, right lads, spread out, keep it wide, use your legs. And we're like, no, keep it tight, keep it narrow, we don't need the ball out to the wing. So bit of crack, yeah, but enjoyable. Yeah,
Eddie, I'll just throw a quick one to you here. I just want to ask you about the situation that Johnny Kelly's in with Offaly at the moment. So they've played 4 weekends in a row. They beat Kildare in the Division 2A final last weekend, and they're definitely playing another 3 games in a row. So they're playing 7 weeks in a row, 7 weekends in a row, 7 kind of big games. He kind of just said that it's insane to be playing 7 games in 7 weeks, just talking about, and it basically says about them being amateur players. How difficult is that sort of a scenario for a manager where, like, he would have had them really tuned up for last weekend? I'm sure I'd imagine they enjoyed themselves to some extent on Saturday night, and then you have to bring them back down and get ready for a leash and then get ready for the next week and get ready for the next week. How difficult is it from a manager's point of view to get that balancing act of, trying to get lads, keep them fit and keep them tuned, but not to put them over the top, make sure they're fresh for the big game at the weekend? Like, it's a difficult kind of situation, and like, there's no point in saying any different. I don't know why there was a league semi-final in 2A. Then they would have had a break week. It should have been probably the top 2 in the final. But how difficult of a scenario is that for a manager?
That's very, very difficult to manage because you're now entering into, I suppose, and this is thrown on, like looking at your physio and your S&C point of view, they can't get any top up done there. Your S&C can't get lads topped up. A little break from contact matches and that type of recovery to just a training session and getting a bit of a blast into them. But then the bigger issue there is, like, you're 1 or 2, lads away from blowing hamstrings. That's the danger when you're playing matches week in, week out. And it's grand if you're used to that or you're conditioned with that. But for someone like Johnny there, who's putting a premium on the next competition is the big one for him, ultimately getting the lads lined up, they're now going to end up running on empty, and that may come against them in the end. So that's a very, very tough ask. I think you have to look at, sometimes they just do not look at these competitions practically and say, hold on now, is that a very, very unfair hands to deal to one team while another team maybe is getting a bit of a breather for 2 weeks or whatever it is. But yeah, I think that certainly layers are in competitions like a semi-final unnecessary for what's trying to be achieved here. And like, I think the only thing that should be there for everybody is you just want a level playing field. You don't want an advantage. Yeah, I think it's one thing if you have a championship where 4 teams go to the quarterfinals and you have a preliminary. Ideally, you want a setup where everybody has the same cut at, be if it's a fortnight or a week, that's grand. If everyone is playing week in, week out, that's grand. But I think what you don't want is that the other team can kind of get a chance to go look at that match last weekend, measure you, and they're nice and fresh coming into it, whereas you're now getting into a red zone with injuries.
Yeah, sure. The Mayo footballers are playing this weekend against Roscommon, who've been sitting back for the last week or two. Mayo won a big final. I'm sure Davy Burke and the Roscommon lads went up, analysed it, have the video, have it digested every which way. There's another thing as well. I just think when you win something, like I have a little doggy in the background here. Yeah, when you win something, you should be like, Jesus Christ. There's no way winner should be punished at all. You should be able to enjoy it. Like, imagine if you won a league title with Kilkenny and you weren't able to go for a few jars or something because you're playing next weekend. And what do you remember most about your days? I'd imagine is the crack. Ye boys landing over to Tommy Walsh's house or wherever it was that time. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just think that's fundamentally wrong that you can't go and celebrate something.
Yeah, well, I suppose I wasn't part of the panel that time, and I mightn't have went, even though the house is technically in our parish, I think. But yeah.
That's more to do with club rivalries than anything else, I'd say.
Yeah. There's a bit of that going on, but no, I Jesus, like it's the one thing, you see even too. You look at even the rugby lads now, like they go enjoy themselves, and I think that's a fundamental part of being part of a group like that. Is you have to have the crack, you have to have the releases. There's times where it'll tighten up and it'll move on, and there's certain matches there, right, we're going again next weekend, we can't. But something like that, a national title, like, is something that you don't get them that often, so you have to enjoy them, and it's equally important in terms of building a spirit. I think that's what lads live for. They're in each other's company, and that's when they get to know each other, having a bit of crack together, and coming back in this following Tuesday night or whenever it is, and just blow the system out and get the dirty diesel out and go again.
Yeah, we'll chat briefly about the league final now, Eddie. Before we go in talking about the game itself, Will O'Donoghue's going to miss the league decider, so he's been recommended for a 1-match ban after that incident, or a couple of incidents maybe, with Alan Tynan before throwing in the semi-final. The CCCC reviewed the incident and proposed Donoghue be suspended for 1 game, and early indications suggest that Limerick won't challenge the ban. Any thoughts on that? Just the ban itself, the fact that they're not going to appeal it. This will have ramifications later on in the year. Were he suspended again, he would serve a 2-match ban. Same situation as Kyle Hayes would. Now, traditionally, the last couple of years, Limerick have kind of picked up a decent amount of red cards in the league, and very, very few come summer, bar maybe Garrod Hegarty's red card.
Year.
Outside of that, their discipline has been really good in championship. But what do you make of the red card, and what do you make of them not looking like they're not going to appeal it, and the fact that he's going to miss the game at the weekend?
Yeah, I think missing the game the weekend is not the end of the world for this Limerick squad. But like, if you're Willie Donoghue, I'm sure you don't want to give anyone in that squad a sniff of your jersey. So there's that issue. And despite the fact that from all of us looking in from the outside, you'd say, yeah, Will O'Donoghue is a nailed-on player on that Limerick team. But at the same time, for him, look, it's obviously disappointing. But look, the incident itself, you watch it once or twice, and yeah, I don't think there's any real intent. I think it's just there's a bit of jockeying going on, which you sometimes get at the clash, and it was just maybe there was a slight bit of a height difference in whatever way he swung or whatever. But I suppose the bigger thing, and I had a situation like this before coming out of a league final where I got a month and the championship was 5 weeks later. So look, you look at it from the outside and go, look, there's nothing to miss here. But the bigger ramification is that if you, and it can happen sometimes, you just fly into a tackle and you do mistime it, and suddenly you get a red. And I think that on its own you can deal with. But there's a double whammy then in that situation. So it just means you have to be ultra careful then. And I think that's the dilemma then, is are you at your best if you're going to be going, oh Jesus, I can't fly into tackles. But yeah, look, you can say by the letter of the law there is a strike there. But I suppose it's, again, with all these things, is consistency. Will every one of those type incidents get dealt with in the same way? I'm not sure. But either way, like, I don't think there was a big contact either. But Limerick not appealing it, I suppose, is I suppose you have to cut your cloth with those things. You have to look at it as merit and say, is there good evidence against me, or have I a realistic chance of overturning this? And I think that's what Limerick will have done, and they may have felt that, look, we haven't mitigation here to go with. And I think that's the big consideration. You said there's no point in going in. I think a lad said to me one time, don't just go appealing things for the sake of appealing it. You either appeal it because it's genuine and there's merit there, or there's a reason to accept fight it, or else you just take your medicine and you move on.
just something you mentioned there. We would all see Will O'Donoghue as a guaranteed starter, but it's kind of like your team back in the day. I'd say he's probably, not that he's not bricking it or anything like that, but he's thinking, Jesus, someone else is getting my jersey now for 70 or 75 minutes and there's a chance to hold on to it. Chances are if Barry Murphy comes in and he plays like unbelievably well, like he did in the second half against Tipperary, there's a fair chance he could start the first round of championship against Waterford, because that's the way Kylie generally operates, even though O'Donoghue is probably one of his biggest henchmen. I'd imagine it was the same with G, that he didn't want to be missing anything. Everyone thought you were guaranteed starters, but I doubt Brian saw it that way.
No, never. And like, I remember seeing the lads who used to get injured and they'd be doing this extra run on the sideline. And I just went one day, I said, oh God. You know, sometimes we look, it'd be nice to get a couple of weeks, just a break from the heavy training. And then you look at the boys out on the sideline, you go, oh God, no, I'm glad I'm never injured. But quickly on that, in 2008, we went up and played G. And I think now I could be talking to one of the culprits anyway, but Michael Fenley got injured up in Portlaoise. Remember that? He was hurling. He was going well at the time. He looked as if he was going to nail down his starting place in 08. And I think he got a belt in the tooth and he broke a thumb or something like that.
Okay.
Derek Lynn got back in and I think, roared into the year, was so pivotal for us. And it was probably 2010 before Michael Fenley really got back to where he was. So the point I'm making is you don't want to let up because someone gets a sniff of it. And I'd imagine there are guys in that Limerick squad literally tearing the jerseys off the starters' backs to get a place on it. I'd imagine it, and I put myself into that situation. If I am one of those guys that's 18, 19, 20, and you're getting, okay, you're the finisher and you're a part of the group, absolutely. But don't tell me you don't want to be starting. You don't want to be playing the big days. You don't want to get your jersey for an All-Ireland final and get in there and show the manager I can do it in All-Ireland final day. So there is an element to that, yeah, you will be so conscious of.
I'm like Shaggy. It wasn't me anyway, because I was rolling around. I was rolling around in the ground with Richie Hogan for most of that game. So it definitely wasn't me anyway. I think there was a rule change invented on the back of that. There was a couple of times Richie went running. I just literally jumped on him, and I think it was later that year or in 2009. If you just pulled an opponent to the ground, it was now a yellow card anyway. So there might have been a rule change on my behalf there. Just looking at Kilkenny going into the league final, Eddie, have you liked what you've seen so far? Obviously, maybe a bit of a rude awakening against Tipperary that second day. Nice few new faces in. No Adrian Mullen, no TJ Reed, as you said there about getting to the league final in 07. Down a good cohort of players, particularly Ballyhale lads. It's probably a good sign Kilkenny have gotten this far and been, they were comprehensive enough against Cork the last day, considering the faces that aren't in there at the moment.
Yeah, no, I think Derek will be very, very pleased with the league. I think when I seen the teams for that match in Nolan Park, I felt myself personally, I said, this is as good a chance as Tip are going to get now to beat Kilkenny in Nolan Park, because Tip rolled a strong team that day. Kilkenny were obviously trying a few new lads. And I think Derek has persisted with a few guys, the likes of Billy Drennan has really stepped up and played all through the league, hit the freeze, which is a big ask for a young guy coming in. So he's been able to give lads game time. Garrod Dunn has got some. Timmy Clifford has got some. So I think all in all, Mikey Butler is back into the loop there as well. So I think what he's trying to do now, even Hughie the last day at centre back, we were all probably looking at that saying Hughie Lawler is our guaranteed full back. But now you're kind of going, God, is he going to have a look at that? And even going ahead to Sunday, wouldn't that be an interesting one, Hughie Lawler and Cian Lynch? But yeah, Derek will be very, very pleased, I think, with the league. He will face into this match knowing that, yeah, they're underdogs and they can have a right good cut off it. But God, he would love to win that league as well. He would love to know that he can, take a bunch of young lads and the older, the more established lads, the mix, bring them to Páirc Uí Chaoimh for a National League final and go toe-to-toe with a Limerick team that are very, very hard to beat. So he'll be delighted if he can really, really, compete with them and maybe get something out of that match. But I think at the back of his mind, and look, Derek was a competitive guy himself, so don't be under any illusions. He's not going down there solely just to see where the boys are at. They'll go after this. They will try win it. And, they won't die wondering anyway. And that's one thing that, in fairness, I thought the last day with Cork was when there was a bit of mess and started. Kilkenny stood firm, so I think that's all he will look for them. And I think Sunday, like, what you have to bear in mind is I think maybe 4 weeks time, maybe less, Galway are coming to town. And that's where he wants. He wants to know, coming out of Sunday evening, who he has to supplement his squad and supplement. He probably has a starting 15 in his head for the championship, but he will want to know who he has to build his squad and know that who he can bring in on any given day and contribute.
Kind of looks like he's marrying the old with the new. Pádraig Walsh is listed at 4, but he doesn't really play cornerback. He kind of plays that roving cornerback. He's the one that they try and get on the ball a lot of the time for if they are delivering a ball in long. Have you liked? It was maybe a bit frustrating against Tipperary at times where it broke down. But have you liked the way they've kind of married the old with the new? The longer deliveries when it's on, the working it through the lines when that's on.
Yeah, look, they are, and I think this is something that I think it's fair to say Kilkenny have been trying to build it in and do it for the last 5-6 years, and at times it's excellent, and at other times then it just fades away a small bit. So I think the trick with that is knowing when to use it short and when to go long. Like, I mean, I think you seen Cork the last day, like they done a few years ago, they were very quick to tag guys that they didn't want receiving the ball, and Pádraig Walsh is obviously there for that reason because he's good to see space. And yeah, in the league, I think the ball doesn't fly as much. There was a few bad distributions coming out of defence. Like, I felt we didn't put Cork to the sword with an extra man when we should have. You know, we left Cork hanging in that match. So that's the only little work on that you say, look, when you're getting the ball free like that and coming marauding forward, well, there has to be a good system of, you know, what you can't do is bring the ball out and then just scull it straight down to the edge of the square and where there's plenty of bodies. Like, you have to really try stretch a defence left and right. So Pádraig is probably the guy that Kilkenny will want to use in that role. But yeah, look, they're trying to do it for the right reasons. I think against Tip, they went too central with their passes and they were in at the ankles, whereas you'd like to think that during the summer, now you snap those passes, they're in the paw. I think Killian Buckley got a great point that day against Tip, which is the type of game that you're trying to play with that give and go. And it's obviously to tidy it up and polish it up is going to be the key.
Yeah, Richie Hogan was back at 11 the last day. There's some talks that he might have picked up a bit of an injury in that Cork game. But just even to see him back, Eddie, how crucial would a fit Richie Hogan be to Kilkenny this year?
Sure, look, I think his presence alone now, look, obviously there's Richie has had a couple of injury issues over the last couple of years, which has curtailed his involvement. But in terms of a guy that's going to really take watching around the defence, like even the last day, I thought early doors, like he got a massive real Richie Hogan point at the start of that game. But his presence alone meant that Cork, you know, had to deal with him. Someone had to tag him. You cannot leave someone like that floating around picking up ball. And I think then, you know, maybe the area that, you know, was where he struggled. I thought the last day was when Cork were bringing the ball out, when they were running hard lines out of defence and wrapping around. I think that's where, you know, when you say, well, I know you don't want to, everyone has to do the work, but I think that's something that you don't, you know, Richie doesn't maybe have to do as much of. But at the same time, you know, what you can't have is that they're running rings out with it either. But I do think his presence on the pitch will be massive. You know, he can play out there because the brain will get him on the ball. But personally, I'd love to see him in close to the goal. I just think the unsettling presence of having him around that goal, because he is a live wire and his brain thinks faster than a lot of other lads in terms of hurling. You know, that goal he got against Galway the year, remember that he just scooped in the Leinster final.
Magic, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
That type of ability will make up for maybe the bit of speed that's not there as much. But I just think having him around, moving around the goal, he'd be very, very, be a handful.
Is Hugh Lawler at 6 something that you think would be a long-term thing, or is it more while Richie Reed is out? I know he's dealing with concussion at the moment. It would be great to have him at 6, but you probably want him at 3 and 6, don't you, realistically?
Yeah, you probably do, all right. But yeah, it's a spot that he would be useful. I had him at midfield with the 21 the first year, and maybe then a wing back. And at midfield, he was brilliant because Hughie is very good. He'll be always there. I think there was a few he took as options off Murph the last day, and I think that's what he's good at. And Hughie would distribute the ball well. So that's what you get when you bring Hughie higher out the field. He's going to be that kind of guy. If he takes off running, you won't catch him. But obviously, his defensive ability at full back is massive. And I suppose that's the conundrum for Derek maybe is, you know, he has to maybe look at, just in case Richie Reed doesn't make it, what are his options? So I think that's what it's about. It's looking at options, what can he do, and then someone to fill in behind him.
Just a quick one. There's some debate. Now, I don't think it's a debate, but like, do you think there's any hope of Billy Drennan hitting freeze in the championship over TJ Reid? Personally, I think there's no hope at this moment in time, but I think he'll be ready when that happens in, you know, a year or next year or whenever it is. But he is he's almost like a clone of TJ from frees. He's so good from place balls. He's, you know, radar like almost. But do you think there's any hope of him hitting frees come championship?
I doubt it. I really doubt it. And look, it wouldn't be a bad thing either. I think that's where you'd love to see him getting going, like maybe, you know, hitting a few in matches. But like TJ Reed is, you know, TJ's, he wants that. That's part of his game. It's a way of getting him involved in the game. So he will look at it that way. But that's something that I think the best man place to see that is going to be Derek himself, because he's watching the boys in training. He's watching what they're doing. And look, TJ will, I'm sure TJ is clipping away, practicing his frees, keeping sharp, which is what he'll do. But, you know, it's what he'll see in training is ultimately it. But, I can't see it happening. If it is, maybe TJ might be just not as sharp on the frees or something like that. But I think it'd be great to see a young lad like that. But there's a big difference maybe in league matches. And don't get me wrong, I'm well impressed with him. I'm really, really impressed with him. And he's a good joke. He'll play the championship. But I think there's a difference once you get to the cauldron of championship and you're dealing with, you know, the real white heat there. It can sometimes, you know, get in on lads. And that's the ultimate test for him. But I've no doubt in time he'll be ready for that.
We just have a commenter in here just asking, is Billy Drennan a bit light for the highest level of championship this year? He has bulked up a good bit, Eddie, I would say. He's going to get fair tests at the weekend. He's going to be either on Finn or Nash, which is going to be, you know, or maybe Mike Casey or maybe Dan Morrissey. So he's going to be fairly thrown. He's going to be fairly thrown into it this weekend.
Yeah, well, any more bears on the square that we want to put on him? Yeah, that's going to be a massive test for him, and that's the ultimate. Like, I mean, yeah, and in fairness, I've seen him in matches this year. You know, the Waterford, the Tip, and the Cork match. You know, you're going to get physicality no matter what way you go, but he doesn't seem to get too phased by it either. Like, I mean, I see him there a few times, and that's all the learning. That's, you know, you'll find you get knocked a little bit easier when you're young and light like that. But at the same time, it's what he does next. I mean, that's all you want in a player. Okay, he might get the ball taken off him 2 or 3 times. Is he back hunting for the ball the next time? And yeah, I think that's something that doesn't happen overnight. Like, a lad can fill out a fair bit in 12 months, but I still think when a man of, you know, be it Mike Nash or, you know, any lads, Ronan Mars, lads like that, and they leave every bit of their body inside you with a shoulder. It's a hell of a lot different. I don't care how big you are. When you get hit, like seasoned championship campaigners with 4, 5, 6 years under their belts, they can hit, like, if you're 6'4" and 15 stone, they can still hit you and they will lift you out of it. So look, that's there for everybody. But like you said there, we'll find out on Sunday.
Did you just when you're saying that, do you ever regret getting in the Rock's way that time?
I was a human speed ramp that day. Yeah, I don't know.
I actually thought you did okay because he was going full steam. You kind of held your ground, didn't you?
I know I tilted over. All right. It's mad. It's gas the stupid things that maybe you think of sometimes, and maybe you'd say, well, the ambition was admirable. But I actually thought in my own head, I said, God, wouldn't it be great to stop him? And that was, honest to God, that's what went through my head as I was going towards him. And sure, I didn't put, you know, you went in a small bit casual. And sure, the Rock is coming like that. There was only one thing was going to happen. Like, and, oh, geez, yeah, no, it's gas. Thankfully, he didn't absolutely pulverize me with it. Like, it was just more, I was tense. So he knocked me over and I bounced back up, scarlet and embarrassed because you knew the whole place was going, oh, you big idiot. But yeah, no, it was there's a technique to that, and even still, I don't think even with 5 or 6 more years of experience, I don't know if I'd be able to stop that man.
It's amazing the things that you think you're able to do on the pitch. I remember getting a dart off Bonner Matter in a league game in 2009, and I knew my shoulder was in bits. I knew it was in bits, but because he got me lovely, he'd noted me with shoulder lovely, I said, oh, geez, I may run into this lad. So I ran into him with me bad shoulder, and I'd say if it was going to be out for a month, I ended up being out for about 4 months after. The AC joint had basically gone like that as a result of it. But you just think, geez, I can't just like get one up on me and just make an absolute clown of yourself. But
it's like the time you get winded and you jump up off the ground and you know your wind is gone and you're like, and you just go, don't show that they got you, and just nodding
Yeah.
at a fella, and you actually can't wait to turn around and walk away and die.
Just quickly, Eddie, are there any particular matchups you're looking forward to at the weekend? I'd imagine the couple of minutes of a taste that David Blanchfield got of marking Big Garrod in the All-Ireland final last year. That's maybe something that might happen. Maybe, you might have Dara Corcoran tracking Tom Morrissey. As you said, you could have Hugh Lawler tracking Keane, Billy Drennan potentially on Sean Finn. Anything in particular stand out that you're really looking forward to?
I think, look, if Hegarty plays and Tom Morrissey plays, I mean, they're two guys that are so pivotal. Look, where do you start with who's important to Limerick and all that? It's maybe then who picks up Gillan. Is Tommy Walsh going to pick up Gillan? So that's a test for him, and I think that's what. If I'm Derek, I'd be really prodding the guys to go have a cut. Don't die wondering. Don't play tractor. I have this terror of tractors and trailers where you follow a lad around. I think you can't do that. I think you have to be up and you're marking them. And if you can get a ball off Hegarty or Tom Morrissey like Blanchfield, you try hurt them. You try hurt them with a point and make sure then that they don't get something the next time. But yeah, Blanchfield looked custom made for Hegarty in terms of his athletic ability and the left hand maybe being able to, use the hurling the left hand to jockey for possession on those high balls. But ultimately it's Hegarty's movements that he has to really. So if you have ambitions right now, if Kilkenny have an ambition of winning All-Ireland this year, they obviously have to get through their campaign. But the probability is that if you're going to beat Limerick, then you have to take on these lads. So this is a great opportunity for them to have a cut and see where they're at and see where, what they need to improve on.
Just quickly, that tractor and trailers thing, that's essentially that you're tagging a lad, but that you're not just following around, that you're actually having an impact on the game as well as that. You're not just tagging him, if you get me, that you're trying to be proactive. You're not just a stopper, but you're trying to change the game in the sense of getting on the ball. If you're marking Hegarty, it's not just stopping him from getting the ball, it's trying to maybe get on the ball and impact play.
Well, the term, I use tractors and trailers in a bad sense, in that you can't beat a trailer where the forward is towing you around and he just goes where you're playing the game on his terms and you're just following him, kind of maybe playing safe a little bit. It's not good. So what I would be saying is that the modern game involves that if you go and get a ball, you're going to be detached from your marker. So you might have the job for the day. Say, listen, I want you on Hegarty, I want you on Morrissey, or whatever the play is. But you have to be able to go and play, not be afraid to lose him, not worry and say, well, I'm watching him and he's standing at the sideline and the boys are running amok inside. Like, you have to be able to know what's happening and know what he's doing and be proactive and be brave and say, look, if I can go up and get a point. But obviously it's what you do after that is the key. And the example I use so many times, and I spoke about this several times, is you have an image of Jack Fagan, I think maybe 2 years ago, putting the ball over the bar and he's backing back and the camera is still on him. Next thing you turn around and Tom Morrissey's at the other side of the pitch, his direct marker, and he's putting the ball over the bar. So straight away, that brilliant point from a wing back is cancelled out. So that's the way hurling is. It's just ultimate hurling at the moment, is that, and Limerick are so good. That's the key. I think that's your target area. Limerick's restart is excellent.
Yeah, they're so good. They're so good and so economical with the ball, aren't they? And as you say there, they take a hammer blow, it could be a goal or whatever. Quaid puts the ball into a spot that someone moves into, and all of a sudden, a 3-point swing is now 2 points, and you're on the back foot, and they're going after your puck out the next time almost. They're so good at it, aren't they? And they're so good. I don't know, Eddie. I've never seen a team adapt to problems mid-game as well as they do. Like, you've played in games as well where you're beating all ends up. It seems like you're just when a lad kind of is nearly, you just feel like your marker has more energy than you. The team you're playing against has more energy than you, and it's usually not till the next time you play them that you get to exact revenge or whatever. But Limerick are able to, like the Tip game the last day, they're able to turn things mid-game. It's phenomenal, really.
Yeah, and like, if anyone showed another, challenge, like we've seen a few times where teams have stifled this Limerick outfit, but not for a full match. Tips, puck outs, and what they done with that was excellence down in Thurles, their movement, everything. But Limerick were able to just adjust a little bit, and it's a small little thing, like saying pushing up on the puck outs rather than retreating to the 45 with the 3 full forwards and the other lads outside, which is what their kind of standard setup is. And almost coaxing you into coming out against them short. But yeah, look, I think it's what it is that when they play, like, there's a primary run, then there's a secondary run. Like, they don't just, there's not an end move with them. So when Hegarty makes a run or Tom Morrissey makes a run, they're okay, that didn't work out. Nicky Quaid probably has to have three options. Then they're thinking the next move. And it's always, they always seem to have a next thing of what they do next. It's not just going, well, that's the end of it. It's options, options, options all the time. And they're able to just, their in-game smarts is really good. And that comes from probably nights after night doing it below on their own pitch where they're being presented with issues, they're being presented with problems, and then themselves talking it out. Now, that's very, very hard in the middle of a match. You know, we've seen the last day, the breather at half time obviously helped them reassess, which is important. But they are able to do it in match as well. They're able to communicate with each other and do little bits and pieces or whatever it is to change it up, which is a very, very hard thing to do. Because, like you said there, when a team is getting you and they have a run on you, it's hard to fix that.
Just on Limerick quickly, Eddie, have you been impressed with what you've seen in the league? The likes of Donegal Dálig coming in, Micheál Houlihan, Cottle O'Neill back, who looks like he could make a really big play, I think, to be in the starting team. You've Shane O'Brien as well. Like, it's a funny one as well. They're a winning team, but they're not stagnating, if you get me. Like, they've dropped a couple of lads that have been around the squad for a while, have a couple of All-Ireland medals in their back pocket. They seem to have the luxury of parachuting guys in now. O'Dálig has scored something like 110 or 112 from play in the league. Looks like he could be an option off the bench. The other three lads the same, and potentially O'Neill from the start. And that's not to mention Conor Boylan, who come on and got a point in the All-Ireland final. Like, there's a lot of options there.
Yeah, and even the last day, look, Garrod arrived on for a blood sub, and they didn't
not
even,
a bad blood sub,
didn't even, they didn't even need to leave him on. O'Dálig has been very good, or Dowling. What I seen him playing with Munleen this year, like he's a real central player. He's a good player. I think what he is though is it's this typical, what Limerick, what we come to get and know with this Limerick team is these impact subs. You look at him, he is a ball of energy. He never stopped against Tip Hunt. And even it's the bigger thing is, and I know it's one of their metrics that they mark themselves on, is their ability to hunt down and turn over backs. He was just, he was like like he was hunting everything. Anytime the tip man near him, he went hunting. And some of them are very good at standing them up. But I think that's, Limerick have added to their squad in a big, big way now. I think that's, and you look at the guys that are coming in, like you look at even where Colm Coughlin now is, Cottle O'Neill now has to be going, I want to start on this team because, he had, I think a couple of good points against Kilkenny in the All-Ireland final to see the job out the last day. He understands the movement that they do in that half-forward line. He plays centrally as an 11, but I think you could play him on either wing as well. He seems to me, of all the lads there, he seems to understand the movement they do around that area as equally as good as the lads that are there. And what a luxury of riches to say, will we put Keane back out midfield or do we leave him centre forward? I personally think centre forward is the place because he's just going to hurt you so much from there with his hurling brains. And even the last day, I thought he doesn't look anywhere near as snappy and as fit as he can be, but his hurling brain is just out of this world. Like, he's just seeing things behind him, and he attracts lads in, and he's able to just get the ball off every time. But yeah, all in all, you'd say they're in a good place, strong squad, competition there, and it's going to take a serious effort to beat them.
We haven't even mentioned David Reed yet. He hasn't featured since coming off against Cork the first day. So there's
Richie English, another fella then as well. Like, played a lot.
That's grand. We just have another all-star to throw into the full backline if anything goes wrong. How do you see the game going at the weekend, Eddie? And just on Limerick haven't been beaten in a final under John Kiley. I think a final of any description, be it Munster League, Munster, or All Ireland. Like, are you poking the bear if they're beaten in the league final at the weekend, or does it set some sort of doubt in that your nearest rival, the team that brought you to within 2 points in the All-Ireland final last year, maybe has one up in you? Like, I think Kilkenny probably have most to gain from the weekend.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think Kilkenny have a lot to gain. I think Jesus, don't get me wrong, I'd love this Kilkenny team to go down there and win a National League in Páirc Uí Chaoimh against the All-Ireland champions. It would be brilliant for them because from my experience, it makes you grow. It brings you bouncing into train a bit more. It gives you a bit of belief, and I think that's the one thing that John Kiley would be kind of in the back of his mind, mindful of. That in 18, Kilkenny were very, very close to them. Maybe it could have gone either way, and they ultimately kicked on. They hurt them in 19 last year. Despite how well Limerick got a return off their puckouts, Kilkenny were still within 2 points. So I think the one thing he won't want to do is give them any sort of a sniff psychologically that, you know, they can come at us. In the broader scheme of things, will it have an impact on this Limerick team going into a Munster Championship? I'm not sure it would have a devastating effect on them. I think it would probably even steal their heads a tiny bit more. But I definitely think they're not going to anything other than try win this match. And I do think if they get going, and with the Kilkenny team, you know, minus TJ and Adrian Mullen, I think, and I suppose I'm conscious of saying this, you'd have people leaping and shouting, but I think if we can keep that to 6 points or thereabouts, I think there'd be nothing wrong with that. I think that'd be a really respectable performance if we can go down there. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to win, but I think if we go down and go toe to toe with Limerick and have a right good battle with them, and you know it's less than 6 points, I think there's no shame in that.
Just lastly, before I let you go, Eddie, and I'm putting you on the spot here a bit, your top 3 in Munster and your top 3 in Leinster.
Top 3 in Munster, Limerick. Oh Jesus, I have a feeling it's going to be Clare and Tip.
Okay, so Waterford and Cork to miss out.
What I seen the last day with Cork, I don't know. There's still something a little bit amiss in them. Waterford, I don't know. I think they're a bit all over the place. But look, they're going to come with something. But you know, I suppose they could bolt, and who knows. Leinster then. It's hard to see. Look, I think it's Kilkenny, Galway. And then after that, then you know it depends what Wexford and what realistically it's probably between Wexford and Dublin. And I know that's, you might say, geez, with respect to everyone else, but like you're going to have a few twists and turns. I think there's a couple of big twists and turns in store in Leinster, and it could be that Antrim or Westmeath could cause a problem there for someone. You'd say, yeah, look, anyone who has to go to Westmeath, I can tell you it's not a tough place. It's not an easy place to go. So you wouldn't know. I think there'll be a twist and turn, but I do expect then I'll go with Wexford to just get through, maybe as the third.
Yeah, hopefully, from Leinster's point of view, wouldn't it be great if Antrim did cause an upset? Wouldn't it be great if Westmeath could build on the? Hopefully, it's not just a case of, you know, Antrim playing Westmeath to see who goes, you know, to avoid who goes down. Hopefully, there'll be points picked up along the way. It would make it so interesting if that was the case.
That'd be brilliant. If you have, after maybe 3 rounds in Leinster, you have all teams with points and all teams haven't been beaten, that just makes for a really, really brilliant finale and conclusion to the Leinster Championship, because there's no team then can kind of get to the end and be kind of comfortable, I think, and know that we can afford to maybe draw here. I think that'd be great to be just have it cutthroat, you know, a bit like the Munster Championship, that there's still so much to play for at the end. And I think that's a possibility. I think it's a very real possibility.
That's the job, Eddie. Thanks a million for your time. We'll talk to you again soon.
No bother, Mixer. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy.
Cheers, Ed. Good man.